Alright. RE5R05A. The first one I had of these did the other day. The video got all messed up on it, so 10 millimeters on this for your vent. $14mm on your band adjustment nut. Yep. $5mm on the adjustment itself. On the bell housing and on the tail housing, you're going to have different colored bolts. That one I did the other day only had one, and it was over here. And I go ahead and mark them for two reasons. One, I know how many bolts it had and where they were at. It also makes it easier to line up your bell housing. So 14 millimeters on this. There's 3 of them on the bell housing on this one. This is a extended warranty, so they're going to have to send in a adjuster out here to inspect this once I get done. It adds a lot of time to the rebuild because you're always waiting on them. Now, these bolts in here are 12s. This is a vibration dampener. You want to put that back on there. And usually on the tail housing, it's this one right there and the one right over here in the bottom. Alright, in the tail housing here, this bearing's usually stuck in there. This is your lineup guide for your park. You got your park actuator, spring, return spring, and pivot pin. You got your race here. Outlet shaft will come out. Park gear, and you got this bearing on the back. $10mm on your speed sensor. $10mm on our pan. Some have brackets that hold wires. On this one we got a bracket on each side. On some of these you have a bracket that's here and here. So just pay attention to where they came off of. Usually what happens on these units is the radiator fails. Now in these Infinities, it doesn't Doesn't normally happen. Because a lot of times I've not put the computer on the valve body on this one. Let's see what we got on this one. Looks like we got converter failure on this one. And pull this harness up a little bit. I'm going to take these 10s out here. This one has a washer that goes on it. There's a little button on this connector over here. Right here, we're going to push that in. Just connects. We definitely got beginning signs of water in here. Come on now, let's go. Alright, you can, in your connector out here, you can either pull this pin off of here and shove your whole connector through, or you can actually disconnect it in here if you want to. There's a connector right there, you just push that tab in. And we do have a computer on here, so we'll take this apart. I'll show you what happens on some of these. Got 45 torques back here in the back. Snap ring pliers. Oh, come on now. Quit rolling on me. Come on. Let it go. There we go. Now if it don't want to come right up, you can just leave it in there and we can get it out in a second. Yeah, decided to come up. If it doesn't come out, once you get your pump out, you can get a hammer up in there inside and tap it up. Alright. Here's our servo and our return spring. Now you want to be careful when you do this because there is a speed sensor, it reads there. So you can get right inside this speed sensor hole right here, and you can get between there and push the drum forward. It usually comes out really easy, so you don't have to worry too much about bending it. Just don't get too radical with it. And of course, since we're on camera, it won't be difficult. Get a little tap. There we go. Alright, we have a sprag inside this drum here. There's our bearing. I'm going to put it on here. We're going to make sure we turn counterclockwise and lock clockwise. There's another bearing on the back. We've got that bearing, and we got this race. 5 millimeters on the pump. Make sure you're all the way down in that hole, as it will strip them out very easily. Some of them can be quite difficult to get out. Alright, 5/32 punch. Doesn't really matter as long as you get down inside the hole. Tap your pump out. Check our surface here. Usually this is all in good shape. I go ahead and mark my pump gears anyway, but on the outer gear you got these dots. They face up. On the inner gear you got this recess. It faces towards the front. Here's our dots on the outer gear. And make sure our surfaces are really good here. Go ahead and replace the bushing. Bands are usually always burnt. Because usually what happens, like I said, is the radiator fails, strips the lining off the torque converter, goes in, plugs up the filter, and people just keep driving them until they drop, and burns all the clutches up usually, and they start flaking off, and the computer usually gets wiped out in the valve body. There's our two bearings there. This race, 4-tab race here. I have yet to see one of these that the planets were bad on, but it will happen. There's a bearing on the back. Normally it does not stick in there. That's our bearing on the back here. Got a lip on it, faces towards the rear. I've never had one that was that difficult to get off. Alright, let me take this out to the press and press this off. Okay, it's not wanting to come off. I have to work on that, and I'll let you know how I get it apart. I've never had that happen on one of these before. We got the snap ring here we got to push in to get this planet off of here. And it is easier with two people, but you can get it. I ought to get my 4L30 tool and use it on here. That's a good idea. Well, I never thought about that until now. Oh yeah. Here we go. And we got a tabbed washer on the back. And it's okay. Alright, this comes up out of here. This bearing here. Oh, before we take this out of here, I want to air check this drum. I've had quite a few of these crack around here. So, alright, it's okay. And our steels are pretty much done. So we get steels for that. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of them. Got our balance piston, our return spring, a regular piston, here. Some of these will have 2 snap rings in here. Some of these are steel on the drums. Some of these have a recess and a cushion plate on the back of this pressure plate right here. Looks like we might be doing a kit with steels. Depends on what style of truck it's come out of, or a vehicle it's come out of. The Titans usually have you know, all this aluminum stuff is steel, so might be worth doing a video about all the different versions that you can come across in one of these. Regular piston, return spring, or balance piston. Okay, got a snap ring down in the case here. Usually the opening's at 12 o'clock. Alright, down in here, right in this area right here, there's a rattle clip. Sits underneath this pressure plate. Pressure plate holds it in. Sits right on top of that last steel. And this is what it looks like. Then we have another snap ring that holds that in. And we're going to pull the return spring, the retainer, the return spring, and the piston out. And there's a bearing here. We're going to pull all that out. Then there's another snap ring behind that that's tapered. And usually the snap ring that's out here on the retainer is at 12 o'clock. And then usually the opening of the tapered snap ring behind all that is at the 6 o'clock. Our retainer and our return spring. Sometimes you can get in with just a pair of needle nose. Depends if it's had water in it, a lot of water in it. This piston is, all these pistons are going to be just a pain to get out. And you can shoot some air back here and it'll pop your piston out. There's our piston and our bearing. There we go. Taper goes up. And our center support's going to come out. You got to pull it out pretty much straight or it'll get cocked in there. Do not get rid of these sealing rings on here. Try not to break them, and do not replace them with the ones that come in your kit. If you do, you're going to be going back into it. If you don't believe me and you feel like you're going to replace your sealing rings, hang on to them, because you're either going to be buying a factory one or trying to scrounge them up somewhere. So do not get rid of them, because you will be putting them back in. We got another sprag assembly here. We're turning counterclockwise, locking clockwise. Another bearing here. Go ahead and mark our sprag. There's a 410. There's a metal washer on the back here. And go ahead and mark our sprag. That we know. It just makes it quicker that we know that this is the side that goes on. And back here in the case, there's a race for that bearing. Goes with the lip towards the back. This snap ring here is usually at the 12 o'clock opening. We've got two sets of clutches in here that are going to come out. There's a cushion plate on there. The dish goes towards the back. Yeah, we have these pressure plate here. Now there's some of these have on this pressure plate here, they'll have little triangles that stick way out here. That pressure plate is really hard to find. At least it has been for me. I've had to replace it like 3 different times, and every time it's just been a pure nightmare to try to get that thing. Alright, there's a snap ring that holds the cage in the back. It has little detents in it that hold where the snap ring pops in. I don't know if you can make them out. There's 4 of them. So I find the opening of the snap ring, I get my big pry bar, I push down far enough to pop that snap ring off with another pry bar, and that's how I take my pistons out. I don't go over to the foot press. So you just want to be careful that this thing don't pop you in the face. Once you get it started, you can get a scribe with a hook on it. You can pull it the rest of the way off. Once you get so far, it's just a matter of popping the cage and it'll pop off of there. Alright, our return spring. And we're going to pop our piston out. There's actually 2 pistons in there. That's what we got right there. Alright, let me try to get this drum and this shaft apart, and I'll let you know how that came out. That's why it didn't want to come off. Our clutches are welded to the hub here, so we got a bearing. What I ended up doing was prying the snap ring out of the inside of the drum here, and then I was able to get it off. So we got our race with the lip down, bearing. I've got a race here. Usually on your Titans and stuff, there's another race that goes underneath here, goes around that snap ring. Our sprag is going to be turning counterclockwise, locking clockwise. There's a snap ring here, or snap ring pliers. I'll pop this off. Come on. Come on. Now our hub will come off. And there's a bearing that goes underneath here. There we go. Go ahead and mark our sprag. That comes off. Alright, let me go take this drum apart. Here's our drum, regular piston, return spring, balance piston. And we'll do the valve body later. I'll include that in there after the adjuster shows up. And let's see, I think our pressure plate's going to be okay. So we're just going to do a kit with steels and band. Alright, let me go write this up and we'll be back. Alright, I can't show the back of the ticket on this one. It's got some personal info from the customer. So on this one we're going to do a master kit with pistons and steels, filter, pump bushing, band, and then that hub that's messed up there is from WIT is a 1735 77A. Probably got a bad tickum. Our torque converter has a ink stamp of P2. Well, I don't know, camera's acting goofy again. Let's see what we got. We're going to do a quick takedown of this valve body and show you what you need to look for sometimes, especially if you get a front brake solenoid code. That's mostly what this one's for, although I imagine it could happen for other solenoids, but that seems to be the one that it happens on all the time. This one does not have that code, so it should not be broken. This gray connector goes over here, the green connector goes over here, and you got that other connector there. That 10 millimeter here. Three of these bolts go through to the filter, and they have 10 millimeter nuts. And go all the way through the valve body. I have a video on that. I also have a video on fixing this little deal that breaks in here. I wanted to include this in the teardown video so that you would know what to look for. And you can go watch that video if you want to know how to get it apart. Now, if you get once these units starts getting water in them, these solenoids, you're not going to get them off of here more than likely without breaking them. So what you need to do when you get a unit that has water in it is take this valve body apart and leave your solenoids on here. Take the two halves apart, and then you can get you a socket that fits around the snout of this solenoid and a little hammer, and you just knock them and punch them out, and it'll keep them from breaking. I've had really good success doing that. Then you can just put new O-rings on there and it should be good to go. But if you go just trying to pry up on these solenoids, once they've had water in them, it's just you're gonna rip them apart. So once you get that off, then you can come back in here, and these little tabs right here, all along in here, that's what holds this down. So you just want to get in there and pop this little plate off the back here. Let me set this down where I'm not screwing around with it. Some come off easier than others. You be careful, don't just dig in there and start ripping, because you're going to screw up the little deals that are in here. You'll see them once we get this apart. Alright, we're getting pretty close. Come on, we just got a couple more. And if you get water in these things, they're pretty much done. I mean, I've seen people talk about they go in here and they take all this apart and they clean it all out. Really, that doesn't work very often. I've tried it. Every once in a while you get lucky and one will be okay, but usually once it gets water in it and it's dead, it's dead. But if you get one of these and you get that front brake solenoid code, this little deal right here will be broken right here on this bend. The way you can tell is you just get a scribe or a flat blade screwdriver and just start pulling up on these, and if it's split, it's very obvious. I mean, it's not hard to tell at all. Like I said, this one should not be. It does not have that code. And it's just barely got the beginning signs of water in there. So what I'll do is I'll go clean this all up. We'll re-silicone right here where this goes in, and put the plate back on it, go through our valve body, get that all done. But I wanted to show that to you so you know, and you can go look at them other videos.